How much difference does spending money make to the performance of your bike?
Well, we're going to find out in cheap bike versus superbike.
Ding ding!
Two bikes at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Firstly is this, Canyon's Aeroad. Lightweight, carbon fibre moulded into aerodynamic shapes, but not at the expense of comfort. And on board we have Shimano's latest and greatest R9170 group set, and that means electronic shifting and hydraulic brakes. And also we have Shimano C40 wheels, so low weight and aero too.
Yeah, and then we've got this, a Rally, which we bought on eBay for £90. To be fair to it, it is actually an awful lot of bike for the money, but how much of a handicap is it gonna be? You know what, mate, I actually think it's all white. Apart from the bar tape, that's not white, but the rest of it's all white.
Yeah, he's pretty much spot on there, Si. Right, round number one.
It's a simple one, this one, climbing men and machines against this, which is actually a particularly uncomfortable climb, just shy of 2 kilometers long, an average gradient of 11%, which I always think is weird because most of it feels like it's above 20%. It's a tough one. I'll just grab that one for now.
No, this is mine after all, Si, so I'm going to have first dibs on this for the first descent, if that's okay. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, that's all right. No, fair enough, because you'll be tired then when you're riding this one, and that one will feel better. Okay, no, that's fine, mate. If you want to do it that way around, it's your call.
Oh, and have we mentioned we're going flat out? Now, the major difference between these two bikes when climbing is their weight. The Superbike is a lean and mean 7.3 kilograms with a Wahoo element attached. Remarkable when you take into consideration that it's an aero bike with disc brakes. And a cheap bike is a rather weighty 11.95 kilograms, a difference of over 50%.
All right.
Right, so you go first. I'm going to give you a minute.
Okay.
But I'm not overly hopeful of catching you. You know what to do?
Yeah. Right. Wish me luck. Off we go.
Look at that. Poetry in motion. Beep, 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 boop. In first time! Ho ho!
I hate that climb. I absolutely hate that climb. To be fair though, I do like this bike. That felt cool. And most importantly of all up there, big range of gears. I ended up using my lowest, which is 34 at the front and 30 at the back. So we'll see how it goes on the other one with racier gears. He loves it, doesn't he? He loves it.
Well, that's my first proper hill climb for a long time, but I didn't even need to think about the bike. It worked a dream. It was just me that's a little bit lacking, but I certainly emptied the tank. Went a bit steady early on, and then when that steep bit pitched up, I just had to give it everything just to get up.
Yeah, you can tell how hard I went, mate, because I've got a patch of snot on my leg warmer that I can't get off.
Got a little bit on my sleeve as well.
Yeah. British hill climbs, eh? Run number 2 then, after a quick bike swap. As well as the weight, there was also the issue of the gears. Pedalling doesn't feel particularly different, it has to be said. Even cheaper gears are remarkably efficient. As a design, chains and sprockets are fantastic. Just as long as you keep them clean, which, as you know, I do mention from time to time. The gear range of the two bikes is broadly similar, even if our superbike has 22 and our cheap bike has 16. And although the Canyon is an out-and-out race bike, the new Shimano Dura-Ace has allowed us to fit an 11 to 30 cassette, which is just as well up here. Okay, run number 2. I'm looking forward to this, actually, weirdly enough.
Superbike time for you, cheap bike for me. Go on, Si, give it all you got, mate.
I will do, mate.
Off you go. Look at that. Sweet as a nut.
Yeah! Oh my goodness me, that feels good. Like, stiff, responsive. I'm intrigued to know the results, but purely based on perception, this is another world, I'm afraid.
Here we go, cheap bike time. First time. Oh, here we go. Run number 2. And the bike doesn't feel too much different. Feel the weight a bit, position's a bit different, but even the cheaper gears are remarkably efficient. And as a design, the chain and the cogs, well, it's just great, especially if you keep them clean, which not all of us presenters do.
Oh. I hate to say it, but that was like night and day. That was very different. Although less so on the steep bit actually. The biggest difference was when getting out of the seat and accelerating, and I managed to stick it in the big ring over the top. Be interested to see the times. Well, to paraphrase 3-time Tour de France champion Greg LeMond, it doesn't hurt any less, you just go faster. The question is, how much faster? And the answer is actually quite a lot, wasn't it? Nearly a minute for both Matt and myself, which corresponds to just about 10% time difference.
Yeah, what about the feeling? Because that's pretty important too. Well, for me, obviously, this bike, the Canyon, the Superbike, did feel far stiffer, far more responsive, and I must admit I spent a lot more time out of the saddle. I felt the power was transmitted far better. This bike, I felt a lot more comfortable sitting down and applying the power in a slightly different way. It just felt generally a little bit more sluggish.
Round number 2, with the climbing out of the way for today, we've got a simple but very important test: braking.
These Shimano hydraulic brakes are the absolute bomb when it comes to performance. They've got all the power you need, but with added modulation, meaning you can use that power to stop far quicker rather than skidding down the road. And the tyres, well, they're gold standard as well. Continental Competition 25mm tubulars.
It's a pretty simple test, riding at 40 kilometers an hour downhill and then trying to stop as quickly as possible.
Oof. The weight distribution there was impressive.
Thanks, mate.
That's all right, mate. Well, 5.4, well, 5.5, 5.4. So 5 meters 40, 5.40.
So the marker's been laid down. How is our cheap bike going to fare? Well, on the positive side, the cables are super smooth, loads of life left in the pads, and I have spent time setting them up. However, you'll see if I squish on the lever, there's quite a lot of flex actually in the caliper itself, meaning that you're going to lose a bit of power and you're going to lose modulation. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that these pads are a really hard compound, meaning that they're going to last a super long time, but they're not actually going to slow us down very quickly. Still, I'm going to give it a good go.
Just keep that bike steady, please, Si.
Sorry, Matt.
Thanks,
Sorry,
mate. 10, bang on, 10.5.
10.5.
10.5 meters.
So we had 5.4 and 10.5. Oh.
Yeah. So roughly double the stopping distance. Wow, Si, the results are in, and I can tell you there's nearly 100% difference in the stopping distances of the two bikes. I mean, let's be fair, the Rally, it stopped you, so it's safe enough.
Yeah.
But the stopping power of the Canyon is mightily impressive.
Yeah, there was a significant difference. Admittedly, this is quite a controlled test, so there's not going to be that many occasions where you'd be doing an emergency stop in real life, or hopefully not anyway. But you've got to wonder, haven't you, that if that difference over the course of a whole ride, even just coming up to junctions and on descents and things, you'd have thought that would have quite a big effect, wouldn't you? Or will it?
Challenge number 3, descending. Now, armed with our braking knowledge, just how are these bikes going to stack up? Will the added confidence of better braking make us faster? Will the improved aerodynamics help as well?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Now, you know that we don't exactly have any alpine descents on our doorstep, but this one is pretty good. 3 kilometres long, an average gradient of 5%. All right, stop laughing at the back. It's the best we've got, okay? We're not going to go flat out because it's open roads and we are, of course, getting old. But nevertheless, I think we should see how we get on.
But significantly, I get to go on the Superbike again. See you in a bit, Si. Okay, Superbike run downhill. Here we go. Oh no, not clipped in.
Okay, here we go. Descent I know well on a bike I'm not very familiar with. Poor brakes, but let's give it a nudge.
"25 seconds.
20, I cannot believe that.
Well,
literally.
Let's have a little look at this bike though. Aerodynamics have got to play a big part,
Yeah.
okay, on that
Yeah.
descent. And it was a bit of a headwind down the descent, but the disc brakes, so much power, they give me so much confidence going into those corners. I could brake relatively late compared to using normal caliper brakes, and even in these wet conditions as well. So yeah, aerodynamics and these wonderfully powerful brakes too.
Yeah. I still can't believe 25 seconds. There were a
quite a
couple of
lot.
points where I ran out of gears, so I just freewheeled.
And I did pedal, I've got bigger gears than you, we need to add that into the mix as well.
Yeah, you do. But 25 seconds.
I
I was not expecting that, mate. I was not expecting that. That's right. It's another brutally simple test. Ride 10 kilometres as fast as we possibly can. Now, so far, the differences between these two bikes have been significant, but not, I think, insurmountable. But I just have a hunch that maybe the Superbike is going to land the killer blow on this one.
Although, you've got a 1.5 watt saving on your element bolt there.
Yep, that's not to be sniffed at. Pulled 1.5 watts back.
It could be closer than we think.
Why do I have a hunch that this is going to be a big one then? Well, firstly, I've got to say it's because it's going to be the longest challenge, so the gaps are likely to be larger. But aerodynamics are incredibly important in cycling, much more so than bike weight, in almost all instances, in fact, except for really steep climbs. The rider admittedly makes up the largest component of total aerodynamic drag, and I can actually get into a really good position on the cheap bike, so that's not something you have to pay for at all. My clothing is also the same, super aero in fact. However, the difference in the bike is still hugely significant. The shallow wheels and 32 spokes cause a lot of turbulence. The round tubes too punch a hole through the air, and it doesn't smooth airflow around it at all.
Beep, 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 beep.
You missed a beep! That was only 4, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry. Anyway, he's off. Okay, here we go. Beep, 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 beep. In first time again.
I tell you what, hey man, whew, you look like you went deep. The funny thing about all of this is actually the thing that bothered me the most, let it out mate, let it out. The thing that bothered me the most was I couldn't get the right gear because it's only 8 speed. I know it sounds stupid, but I was either pedaling too slowly or too fast. And like, it's not a biggie, but it does weigh on your mind a little bit when you're going full gas.
Yeah, I went pretty much flat out there, mate. That one, there's no, the bike.
No
I didn't really, no, I didn't really have to think about the bike. The gear ratios were fine, bottom of the block. Just felt good, and it felt, I'm not particularly quick these days, but this bike is pretty quick, and it felt like it was doing the job. So.
Come on mate, can I have a go please? I'm desperate.
All right.
If the cheap bike's shallow wheels and numerous spokes cause a stack of drag, what's the secret of the Shimano C40s? Well, there are fewer spokes, just 16 and 21 front and back, but the main reduction in drag stems from the rims. Deep section and made out of carbon fibre to allow for this specific wind-cheating shape. The rim is 28mm wide, so that there's minimal disturbance of air as it transitions from the tyre to the rim, and the shape of the rim itself is called toroidal. That means it's aerodynamic on both the so-called leading edge, but then also on the trailing edge, so as the air meets the second side of the wheel.
You ready, mate?
Go for it, mate.
Okay.
Boop, 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 boop. He's in again, first time. Time trial is horrible, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? But at least it was over quicker on this one. I don't actually know exactly what the time difference was, but just looking at the Wahoo, it looked like there was between about 3 and 5 kilometers per hour difference at all times, which is massive, isn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the gears. I just tended to just hoop a big one around that dodgy corner. That was. It just took me a while to get this one going from the turn, and from out of those bends we had to slow down. That's a little bit sluggish, but once you got dialed into a position, it was as quick as it could go, but clearly not as beautifully sculpted and shaped as the Canyon. But
I thought you were going to talk about my legs then.
Oh no, they are pretty beautifully sculpted.
Yeah, thanks.
But no, a pretty good workhorse this.
It is, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think my average is about 40 kilometers per hour.
That's still pretty respectable, a 90-pound bike.
Yep. That's turned into quite a tough day, isn't it?
Certainly has.
Right, results then. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, we've just seen a clean sweep of victories for our superbike. It climbed faster, it braked faster, it descended faster, and it time trialled faster. Which, though, do you think was the biggest area of improvement in percentage terms?
It was actually the braking. So in just a handful of seconds and in just a few short meters, the Shimano hydraulic disc brakes outperformed the regular caliper brakes by a rather whopping 100%. That's not just a significant increase in percentage, but from a performance perspective, that could actually save your life, or at least get you out of a very difficult situation out on the road.
Now, do you need to spend loads of money though to get great braking performance? I don't think you do. In fact, I strongly suspect that a bike with Shimano Sora calipers on would close the gap to those Dura-Ace hydraulic discs quite significantly. So actually, if you do have cheaper calipers, then spending a little bit to replace them could well be a really, really intelligent upgrade.
Absolutely. So, Si, what is next? Aerodynamics. Well, both descending and time trialling, the performances were pretty illuminating, but for me, the descending did catch me a little bit by surprise.
Yeah, there was a 15% difference on average between the superbike and the cheap bike. Now, on the descent, of course, as we've just seen, the brakes will have been responsible for a chunk of that time, but undoubtedly aerodynamics have an effect, and certainly in the time trial they did.
The bad news, I'm afraid, though, is that aero wheels and aero frames don't come cheap. So in this instance, the cheap bike was at a really distinct disadvantage. Although in its defence, if it's speed that you're craving on that bike, don't do TTs.
No, exactly. If you want to race, then race bunch events instead, like a road race. Because if you've got some shrewd tactics and some strong legs, then the disadvantage of riding an unaerodynamic bike will be lessened really significantly when you're riding in a peloton. So work on your body position, maybe even tailor your cycling kit if need be, and you will be able to fly.
So what about the climbing then? So on that short, rather brutally steep climb that we did our tests on, the difference between the two bikes was around 10%. So it just shows that over 4.5 kilograms makes a massive difference.
Yeah, it does. And it's also worth saying, isn't it, that those two bikes felt like completely different animals, like chalk and cheese. And so you can really see why people get obsessed about bike weight. If you like steep climbs, it does make a difference. You know what, mate? If I'm being completely honest, I genuinely was hoping that the difference between these two bikes wasn't going to be quite so significant. But the fact is, the superbike is in a different league. It's just faster, period.
True. So what should we look at next then? Well, how much do you think it's going to cost to start to really narrow that gap? €500?
$1,000?
£2,000?
Yeah. Before we do get onto that though, I think there is one last important point that we should address, and that is that our cheap bike is still a great little bike, isn't it? It ticks two fundamental points. Firstly, it's safe to ride, and secondly, being a road bike, it's just great fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to ride, so you shouldn't get disheartened about this at all. If you do have a cheaper entry-level bike, it shouldn't always be about the bike.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We are all part of the same tribe no matter what we ride. So, on that note, do make sure you subscribe to GCN. We're all part of the same tribe. To do so, just click on the globe. It's completely free.
Now, for another sort of sciencey video about how important weight is, how about clicking just down here where me and Dan did that very test in Andorra.
Yeah, wearing your fat rucksacks.
It was fat rucksacks.
Yeah, or to see a little bit more about Matt's superbike, and in particular, his Shimano Dura-Ace 9170 group set, click just down there.
And don't forget to like and share.
How much difference does spending money make to the performance of your bike?
Well, we're going to find out in cheap bike versus superbike.
Ding ding!
Two bikes at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Firstly is this, Canyon's Aeroad. Lightweight, carbon fibre moulded into aerodynamic shapes, but not at the expense of comfort. And on board we have Shimano's latest and greatest R9170 group set, and that means electronic shifting and hydraulic brakes. And also we have Shimano C40 wheels, so low weight and aero too.
Yeah, and then we've got this, a Rally, which we bought on eBay for £90. To be fair to it, it is actually an awful lot of bike for the money, but how much of a handicap is it gonna be? You know what, mate, I actually think it's all white. Apart from the bar tape, that's not white, but the rest of it's all white.
Yeah, he's pretty much spot on there, Si. Right, round number one.
It's a simple one, this one, climbing men and machines against this, which is actually a particularly uncomfortable climb, just shy of 2 kilometers long, an average gradient of 11%, which I always think is weird because most of it feels like it's above 20%. It's a tough one. I'll just grab that one for now.
No, this is mine after all, Si, so I'm going to have first dibs on this for the first descent, if that's okay. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, that's all right.
I mean,
No, fair enough, because you'll be tired then when you're riding this one, and that one will feel better. Okay, no, that's fine, mate. If you want to do it that way around, it's your call.
Oh, and have we mentioned we're going flat out? Now, the major difference between these two bikes when climbing is their weight. The Superbike is a lean and mean 7.3 kilograms with a Wahoo element attached. Remarkable when you take into consideration that it's an aero bike with disc brakes. And a cheap bike is a rather weighty